so excited you're watching this video. I hope it helps you a lot. All right, today in math, we are going to be on pages 207 and 213. So let's take a look at page 207 first. We're going to be talking about multiplying a fraction and a whole number. Right, so we've worked a little bit with that before, but we're going to just take a deeper look at that today. So let's take a look at this fraction. If I had 5 over 1, remember I've said that this fraction bar is the same thing as divide. It means divide, okay? So that would literally be 5 divided by 1. All right, so let's take a look at that. How many times will 1 go into 5? 5 times. All right, 5 times 1 is 5. All right, so I have a 5 here and a 5 here. That's all the same as the whole number of 5, okay? When I write 5 over 1, I'm not changing the value of 5, all right? It's not changing, it's still 5. Does that make sense? All right, so that works for any whole number. It could be 3 over 1, it could be 100 over 1, it doesn't matter. Anytime I have a number over 1, it doesn't change the value of the whole number, okay? It's still going to remain that same number. Now, today what we're doing with that information is we're actually going to be multiplying fractions, okay? So let's say I had that 5 and I was multiplying it by 3/5, okay? So we did something like this the other day. Let's see if we can remember. Now, what would I do? I have a whole number and a fraction. So remember, I needed to change this whole number into a fraction to multiply. So I would put it over 1. And again, it's not changing the value of 5. I'm just writing it in another way. Now I can multiply. Okay? But let's use the method that we learned about yesterday about cancellation. All right? Remember, I can cancel here before I even start multiplying. So there's not a common factor here with 1 and 3, so I'll leave those alone. But here I've got a 5 and a 5, right? So I can cancel both of those out and make them a 1. Now I can multiply. So I'm really multiplying now. 1 times 3 would give me 3, and then 1 times 1 would give me 1. Now, what do I do here? What is 3 over 1? Remember, anything over 1 is the same thing as the whole number, so I would just have a whole number of 3, okay? Because this is really an improper fraction, and if I divided it out, I would be left with a whole number of 3, okay? See, if I divide it, how many times will 1 go into 3? Well, 3 times. 3 times 1 is 3. No remainder, so I wouldn't have a fraction, I would just have a whole number, 3, okay? Does that make sense? All right, so let's take a look at what you're working on today. So you're working on first 1, A through F. So A through F, what we're doing there is we are changing the whole numbers to improper fractions, okay? So, well, we've got a 3, and we just talked about that. How do I make that into the improper fraction? The whole number would go over 1, right? The denominator would be 1. So 3 would be changed into 3 over 1. What about 16? That's B. What would I do with 16? Put it over 1. Yes, perfect. Okay? The improper fraction, I'm just putting that whole number over 1. It's not changing the value of 16. I'm just writing it as an improper fraction. All right, and then let's take a look at C. That's an 8. All right, what would I do with 8? Put it over 1, yes. 8 is the numerator, denominator would be 1. Nothing's changed there. All right, so you work on D, E, and F by yourself. Now, let's take a look at the other section you're working on. You're working on 2, A through D. All right, so let's try a couple of those. So what we're doing here is we're just multiplying. And remember to use that cancellation method to make it easier for you, okay? So let's take a look at the first one. 4 times 1/2. Okay? So remember what I do here? I'm going to put that 4 over 1. Now I can multiply it by 1/2. Now before we start multiplying, let's take a look and see if there's anything we can cancel here. All right, well, 1 and 1, I can't really do anything with that, right? But what about 4 and 2? Is there a common factor there? Yes, 2. I can divide both of those by 2, and I would get a 2 and a 1. Now if I multiply, it's 2 times 1 is 2, and 1 times 1 is 1. Now this is an improper fraction, so I would need to change it. And we've just learned that any number over 1 would just be the whole number of 2, but if we went ahead and divided that, we would say how many times will 1 go into 2? 2 times. 2 times 1 is 2, with the 0 remainder. My whole number is up here, so the whole number would be 2. All right? Great job. So let's take a look at another one. Let's take a look at B. So B is 2/5 times 10. All right, what's my first step? Absolutely, I'm going to put that 10 over 1. All right, so 2/5 times 10 over 1. Now, before we multiply, let's look for any cancellations we can do. No common factors with the 2 and 1. How about the 5 and the 10? Is there a number I can divide both of those by? Yes, 5. All right, so if I divided 5 by 5, I'd get 1. And then up here, I'd get a 2. All right, now if I multiply, 2 times 2 is 4. And then 1 times 1 is 1. All right, so that's an improper fraction. If I divide, I would get 4. All right, awesome. All right, so then you're going to work on C and D yourself and just do the very best you can, and we will go over those in the video tomorrow. But now the next thing we're going to talk about is going to be on page 213, and that's going to be multiplying fractions and mixed numbers. All right, so let's say I have a problem that looks like this. 1/2 times 1 3/4. All right, now who can guess what I would need to do in order to easily solve this problem? Think about it. Yes, I know you're out there saying, I need to change this mixed number, right here, this mixed number, into an improper fraction. Who remembers how to do that? If I'm changing this mixed number into an improper fraction, remember I multiply the denominator times the whole number and add the numerator. And that's all going to be over the same denominator. Okay, so 4 would stay the same. So then I'm just going to multiply 4 times 1 and add 3. All right, and then that would give me 4 still is the denominator. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 would give me 7. All right, now I'm going to take this improper fraction now and multiply it by the 1/2. So my new problem would be 1/2 times 7/4. All right, now if I multiply it across, if I check for cancellation, there are no common factors in these two numbers or these two numbers, so I cannot cancel here, so I'm just going to multiply straight across. That would be 7 and 8. Okay, so then 7/8 would be my answer. Okay, so when we're multiplying fractions and mixed numbers, first I need to change the mixed number into an improper fraction. Then I would try to use cancellation if I can, and then I'm just going to multiply as usual. All right, does that make sense? So let's take a look at what you're working on today. So you're working on 1A through G under class practice today. So let's take a look at a couple of those together. So 1A. So 1A says 1 1/2 times 2/3. All right, so remember we need to change the mixed number into an improper fraction before we multiply, okay? So if we do that, I'm going to have 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is going to give me 3. And that's, the denominator stays the same, so it'd still be 2. Now I can multiply that by 2/3. Now, before we move on, let's try to remember to do cancellation before we multiply. Do you see any numbers here that have common factors? Ooh, there's a lot. So, both of these I can change to 1. I can divide both of those by 3 to give me 1. And then, with the 2's, I have the 2 in common. So, I can divide both by 2 to give me 1. So, if I multiply that out, I would be left with 1 times 1 is 1, and then 1 times 1 is 1. Now, remember, if I have a whole number over 1 over 1 is the same thing as 1, okay? I could divide 1 by 1 to get 1. So the whole number 1 would be my answer for 1A. All right, let's take a look at 1B. 1B says 1/4 times 2 2/3. All right, who remembers the very first thing we need to do? Yes, change this mixed number into an improper fraction. So the 1/4 would stay the same. Now, I would multiply 3 times 2 to give me 6 plus 2. 6 plus 2 is 8. And my denominator stays the same, and that's a 3. So before we multiply, let's try to remember to use cancellation. So do you see anything here that has a common factor? The 4 and the 8, and then the 1 and 3. Which one? 1 and 3 does not have any common factors, but 4 and the 8 does. So I can divide both of those by 4. So if I divided 4 by 4, I would get 1. If I divided 8 by 4, I would get 2. All right, so then I can just multiply. 1 times 2 would be 2, and then 1 times 3 would be 3. So 2/3 would be my answer for 1B. All right, is it starting to click for you? Starting to make a little sense? I hope so. All right, so let's take a look now at 1C. That is 2/9 times 4 1/3. Okay, what's the first thing I need to do? Change that mixed number into an improper fraction. Awesome. So if I did that, the 2/9 would stay the same. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 plus 1 is 13. Denominator stays the same. All right, now let's try our cancellation. Do you see anything here that I can cancel? No, I can't. There are no common factors between the 2 and the 3 or the 9 and the 13. So I would just multiply straight across the numerator, straight across the denominators. All right, 2 times 13. Ooh, that's a big one, but you can do it. 2 times 13 is 26. All right, and then 9 times 3 is 27. All right, so that would be my answer for 1C. Awesome job. So let's take a look now at one more. Let's take a look at 1D. 1D is 3/8 times 2 1/2. All right. What is the first thing I do? Yes! Change the mixed number into an improper fraction. All right, so 3/8 would still be 3/8. Now, 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1, 4 plus 1 is 5. Denominator stays the same. Give me 2. All right, so let's take a look. Do you see anything I can cancel? No, no common factors here. No common factors here. So just going to multiply. 3 times 5 is 15. Then 8 times 2 is 16. All right. So then that would be the answer for 1D. All right. Now, there is one other type of problem I do want to take a look at really quickly, though. Because this is going to come up for you on G. So let's take a look at an example like it. So let's say I have 5/8 and I'm multiplying that by 12. Okay? Well, we remember about 12. I can just make that into an improper fraction by putting it over 1, right? So if I did that, it would be 12 over 1. Now, if I multiply, let's first look for cancellations. Nothing between the 5 and the 1, but yes, 8 and 12, I can I can divide both of those actually by 4. So if I did that, this would leave me with a 2, and this would leave me with a 3. All right, so now when I multiply, 5 times 3 would give me 15. 2 times 1 is going to give me 2. All right, so now this is the same kind of situation you're going to run into on G. So this is an improper fraction, right? And I cannot leave an improper fraction as my final answer. I need to fix this. So I would need to divide, right? That's what we do with improper fractions, we divide. So let's go ahead and do that. Oops. 2, how many times will 2 go into 15? 7. 7 times 2 is 14. All right, I subtract, I'm going to get 1 for my remainder. All right, so remember my whole number is at the top, 7. My numerator is the remainder, it's 1, and then 2 would be my denominator. All right, so then my answer there is going to be 7 1/2. So you're going to run into that on actually E and G. You're going to have to divide. You're going to end up with improper fractions on E and G, so just make sure that you divide that out to get the mixed number there. Okay? All right, well, so go ahead and work on those by yourself, and we will go over those in the video tomorrow. All right, so I hope you have a fantastic day. Thank you so much for all of your hard work. Bye!